What's going on, guys, and welcome back to this week's Bourbon of the Week. My name's Chris. I'm going to be your host for today, and if you don't know what we do on this channel, we take all the bourbons in my collection behind me, we rank them on 3 different categories: price, taste, drinkability. We put it on a scale of 10, we put it on a ranking sheet to see what you should buy and what you should pass on. This week, we've got Brothers Bond. This is a new bourbon actually released here in 2021, I believe. Everything I've read on it says it was released around May of 2021. We're going to get right into the bourbon bomb on this first, change it all up on you today, but in the meantime, make sure you hit that subscribe button, make sure you hit that like button. We're over 1,500 and we're going for 2,000 next. Let's get to our bourbon bomb though. So for this week's Bourbon Bomb of the Week, we're going to go over Brothers Bond, who's behind it, what it is, where it comes from, and this is basically a collaboration between a gentleman named Ian Somerhalder and Paul Wesley. They were actually brothers on a TV show called The Vampire Diaries. Now, I never watched it. I actually asked my wife. She never watched it either, which is surprising. I don't know how long it was on TV, but that's not really the important part. They were brothers on this TV show. I think their names were like Stefan and Damon, Salvatore, something like that. Bunch of vampire stuff going on. But they were basically best friends. They were brothers on the show, and it's named Brothers Bond not only for the brothers bond that they built together, but after the bond that people have over drinking whiskey or drinking bourbon. Throughout the show, they drank bourbon together, and they decided their next step in life was to make a bourbon themselves. Now, they're not making this themselves. This is sourced from MGP, which we're going to go over later, but they are behind this bottle. There's a third gentleman behind it. I forget his name. Vincent Hanna. He is the third illegitimate brother behind this bottle. He is the co-founder of Brothers Bond, and basically, since they drank together so much offset during the Vampire Diaries, they decided they were going to make their own bourbon, and this is what they came up with. This is sourced from MGP, and it's a 4-grain whiskey. We're going to get into all of that soon, but that's what we've got here. Basically, another celebrity bourbon, but can it stand up to the test? Let's find out. So I do want to preface this review with the fact that I've actually reached out to Brothers Bond. I was going to do a Garrison Brothers versus Brothers Bond, a battle of the brothers. And I was like, yo, why don't you guys make me a little 30-second hype video? I can throw it up. Garrison Brothers, all for it. Loved it. Brothers Bond, not so much. Never got back to me. Too big, I guess, with their celebrity status, even though they don't like to call themselves celebrities. But with over 1.5 million followers on Instagram, just on their Brothers Bond, more Ian Somerhalder than Paul Wesley, I believe, but that's what we've got here. Another celebrity bottle, but they seem to be more involved in this process than somebody who's just throwing their name on their bottle. Almost like a Matthew McConaughey. He's actually involved with Wild Turkey. These two are actually involved in the tasting, sitting down, all the meetings and everything like that. So they're not just a celebrity endorsement. They're actually part of this bottle here. But we've talked enough about those two. Let's get into everybody knows before we get started. Time for the traditional sip. It's light. So this bottle here is 80 proof. It is a undisclosed mash bill, but we do know it's 65% corn, 22% rye, and then it's actually a 4-grain. So it's some wheat and some malted barley, but we don't know how much. Can't be that much of any of those because we're already at what? 65, 75, 85, 87% of the bottle is already in the first two. So it's an MGP product. The reason we know it's an MGP product is because it says distilled in Indiana. Now that's not always the case, but 99% of the time, if it's distilled in Indiana and it's some off-brand bottle like this, it's probably coming out of MGP. So they are 4-grain. So we know of another 4-grain bottle coming out of MGP, a little bit different of a mash bill, but Penelope is another 4-grain bourbon coming out of MGP that we did enjoy a lot, both at 80 proof. One day we're going to have to match these up against each other blind, but that's what we're working with here. Let's get right into drinkability on this. And we got to keep in mind, this is an 80 proof bourbon, so it's not ever going to sip too hot, but let's see if it sips over that 80 proof. Now, I will say again, I don't want to like this bourbon because these celebrity MGP products, they're usually all the same. You know, they're just trying to make a quick buck. They got nothing else to do with their time and money. So let's see if this lives up to more expectations than not. It's very light. It's very easy to drink. I do think it does have a tiny bit of a kick for an 80 proof bourbon. It doesn't seem to sip as smooth as something like Penelope did or something like a Basil Hayden's, where there's really no ethanol kick at all. And that's coming off of me drinking like 3 or 4 or 5 different barrel proofs over the last couple of weeks here in our reviews. So to get this 80 proof, you know it's going to be light in flavor because of that. The drinkability, I mean, it's okay. It's decent. It's nothing exceptional. It's nothing to write home about. I'm going to give it like a 7.5 when it comes to drinkability on this. And it's only because it's 80 proof that it's that high. I would be curious what they could do. Obviously, they're not making their own, so they're not going to make a barrel strength or anything like that anytime soon if they just put this out in May. So 7.5, 7.52. I'll give them the extra couple points where we're going to put it on drinkability. So as you know, next we're going to get into taste on this. Now, 80 proof bourbon, we know it's not going to have a full flavor body effect like a barrel strength or a barrel proof, but we're not comparing it to them. We're strictly keeping this on its own as its own bottle here. And how does this sip for an 80 proof bourbon? Not terrible as far as taste goes. Now, very light, obviously, very watered down. The flavors are very hard to find, but it is flavorful. I will give them that. It is more flavorful than some of the other, like we have Bird Dog, for example, which is very easy to drink, very smooth, but you're almost searching for the flavors in that. This one with that high rye, 22% rye, gives you a little bit of something to look forward to on your next sip. You have a little spice behind there. The sweetness is obviously still there with the corn. The wheated and the malted barley almost brings out like a little bit of a peanut note. I would want to say that this is more malted barley than wheat, but at the same time, the wheat still adds a little bit more sweetness to it. There's flavors to be found in here, and that's saying something for an 80 proof bourbon usually. Now, they did say on their website banana bread, and I tried so hard. I really did. I poured a whole glass of this. It's only 80 proof bourbon. I can have one, right? I couldn't find it. Can't find banana bread. Maybe you can. Again, I'm new to this whole picking out tasting notes thing. We're still working on it. We've got rye. We've got all that kind of stuff. But banana bread, maybe like an earthy, grainy, wheated note with the bread, but I'm not really too sure about banana. But again, for an 80 proof bourbon, this does have a pretty good taste to it. I'm not going to say it's exceptional because it still is an 80 proof bourbon, but I can't knock it for being an 80 proof bourbon. That's exactly what it is. So for what I have here, for what it is, that's a pretty good drink. I would give it like an 8.5 when it comes to taste on this. And as you know, last but not least, we're going to get into price on this. And price on this it's in that range. It's $44. I think I bought it for pushing almost $50 actually in New Jersey. Can't get it here in Pennsylvania as of yet. $45, I mean, we're talking like you got to compete with something like Basil Hayden's, which we know we don't love, but at the same time, for an 80 proof $40 bottle, it's pretty good for that. The value isn't there, but the value isn't here either. So again, we've got another sourced MGP product. It's 4 grains Shore if you want to throw that. You've got the name behind this with Ian Somerhalder, who all I can value of that is, oh, you drank a bunch of bourbon when you were on Twilight or whatever you were on, the Vampire Diaries. So what value is added here other than the name Ian Somerhalder behind it, and Paul Wesley if you count him as well? And I don't know what it is. So again, it's an 80 proof bourbon. It's sourced MGP product. The taste, sure, it's a better taste for an 80 proof bourbon, but I know plenty of bourbons under $30 with higher proof, better taste quality, and a name like Four Roses behind it. So why should I spend $44 on this? Well, probably trying to get some fans to buy their bourbon and see where it goes from there. I don't know if they're going to do anything else after this. I don't know if they're going to do any cash strengths or barrel strengths or single barrel, whatever they're going to do with this bourbon company. But as of right now, they got an average product out there for an above average price. So I'm going to give it like a 6.1 when it comes to price on this. And this is where we usually send it over to the Bourbon Bomb of the Week, but since we already did that, let's get right into our score on this. And this scored a 7.37. Not a terrible spot for it. It shouldn't be in the 6s because that taste really does uphold this bottle. The drinkability is meh. The price is way too high. But that's what we've got, a 7.37, falling, I would say, a little bit below average when it comes to the bottles in my collection currently. Now, again, I don't want to compare this to something like a Weller or a Stag Jr. or anything like that, because that's not what this brand is trying to be. They're just trying to be your typical everyday sipper, 80 proof, something to sip on. It just doesn't seem to have quite enough for me to really appreciate what it has going on, and it just seems like another celebrity gimmick to try to make money off of their name. And again, I'm glad that they're doing what they love. I'm glad that they're passionate about this. But at $44, I probably won't pick up another one. That's just me personally. 7.37 is where we're going to put this. But that's going to be it for this week. Make sure you check me out on Instagram at Bourbon of the Week. Every Tuesday at 4 p.m. we drop an image of the bourbon that we're going to review. You can go on and try and guess my score. If you guess the closest, I'll give you a shout out on the channel, as well as enter you in a monthly drawing to win some cool prizes. We've got custom Glencairns, we've got hoodies, we've got t-shirts, all kinds of stuff. Also, if you want to support me in a different way, we have a Patreon up and running. Make sure you check me out on Patreon. That link is in the description below. And if you want to come chat with us anytime, 24/7 on Discord. We're pushing 100 members on there. Once we get to 100 members, we're going to do a Discord-only giveaway. In the meantime, click that like button, click that subscribe button so you can keep with content like this. Don't drink and drive, drink responsibly. And as always, stay healthy, stay happy, stay drinking. Cheers, y'all. Oh, we're doing our live event. When is that? Tuesday, November 23rd at 8 p.m. That's right before Thanksgiving. We're going to do our 1,000 subs live stream. We're going to do a bunch of cool stuff, a bunch of giveaways, including some flights, all kinds of merchandise, hoodies, hats, everything that I've already talked about. So come check that live out, November 23rd, 8 p.m. But in the meantime, stay healthy, stay happy, stay drinking. Cheers, y'all.